Welcome, my divas, to the first ever podcast, first ever episode 2 of Majita Monday Podcast, brought to you by Emthonjeni Student Wellness. This podcast is meant to be a safe space to have dialogues about masculinity matters. And I have to say, masculinity matters. But nonetheless, I am Tlotliso Kama. I work for Emthonjeni Student Wellness and PR, and formerly a facilitator for Singamadoda. And I'm with Leslie. I want you to break down with Tuban. I think some people don't know who you are.
That's a very nice welcome. So my name is Leslie, and I am a student here at Nelson Mandela University, as well as a peer helper. And as a peer helper, I'm the relatable guy that you go to if you don't need the professional help.
Powerful. And, the conversation we're about to have is very interesting when you're saying you are that person that they can go to. And oftentimes, men do not go to these resources. I mean, we looked at the statistics for 2019 that states that 79% of deaths were mental health related. In 2023, we actually noticed something very significantly interesting, that suicide rates were up by 23.9. That 6 million men were suffering from depression. And these are interesting stats. And if you look at how many men go for counseling, they make about 6.6%. This is scary. How does this make you feel?
Hey, it's very scary to think about, and it is very sad, man. It's very sad that the numbers are so sparse. There's a huge number of men that go through issues and ultimately and unfortunately reach to suicide. And the number of people that actually go to get the help, the number of men that seek out the help is sad, because as much as we'd like to believe that maybe they don't know about these things, a lot do. The symptoms are identifiable. A lot know the resources are available. But the problem now is going out and seeking the help, which is not being done. It's quite sad.
Very powerful what you say. So this leads us perfectly into the next conversation. And I need to say, that the other day, in the morning, we were having a conversation about relational dread. And we're talking about how culture has enforced this, where a boy child is taken away from his mother when he's young and he's sent to the mountain. And he spends so much time away from his mother. And then again, it continues that after he comes back from the mountain, when there's a ceremony happening at Kai, he does not sit with his sisters. He does not sit with his mother. He's distant. He sits there by the crowd. They have a cute little crowd there where all men sit. And that teaches and reinforces the fact that men should not be vulnerable with women. And now, already you've never been vulnerable with your own mother. How are you going to now be in a relationship with a woman and be vulnerable with her?
It really is sad, man. And when you were talking about this, I thought maybe it's something that was just an African cultural thing. But then when you look at stats throughout, there's philosophers that are pro-stoicism. And essentially stoicism is keep it to yourself, don't show weakness. And by weakness, it's essentially vulnerability. And it's the number one symbol of strength is accepting that I can't do this on my own and going out there to seek help.
Sure. So it comes back to the main topic. Why don't men talk about their issues? Why don't men talk about mental health? And the question I want to, so there's a word that we're using, and it's talk. Leslie, how do we communicate as men?
Hey man, communication is quite hard, because like you said, we are raised and have principles instilled on us on how to communicate with other men. See, now the way I'd communicate with you is different from how I'd communicate with my sister on emotional things, because I was taught by men how to communicate to men. You see, now that's where we try and have to find a way to break the walls. I was reading an article earlier talking about this young man, and that I want to quote what he said.
It says, where I'm from, there's so much stigma around mental health, talking about mental health, especially for us as young men. We were taught to bottle things up and man up. But I later saw how this leads to so many adult men quietly suffering from mental illness. And remember now, these adult men are the ones that teach us as young men to essentially be a man. And he later said that broken men create broken men. So now this brokenness is transferred.
It's inherited.
You see now, it's inherited. And now there's something about habit. It's very hard to break out of habit because it's now a fundamental part of who you are. Now, talking, communication, it's quite hard in the sense that I'm not you. It's foreign to me. It's foreign. It's not something that comes natural where I just go to, hey, to listen, hey, it's tough. Then they go and they depart. So now, how do I break those walls down? That's a question that I've been trying to ponder upon and solve.
With what you're saying in the question and attempting to answer it, there's never been a safe space, not even among men themselves, where we can just say, hey, let's talk. And I'm glad there's a platform like this that we are starting. Hopefully it becomes a movement for change, and we can now, break the habit of the legacy that we have had, that we have inherited. It hasn't profited us in any form or way. And, it leads to the question of what is so dangerous about being vulnerable? What is so shameful about being vulnerable for men?
It comes to you as a person and your environment. You see now, being a man has been centered around strength. I mean, the phrase is like, you're the pillar of strength. You're supposed to be the head of the household. See now, being a pillar of strength means you're something that is dependable. Something that is guaranteed to be standing. You see now. Now, when you show vulnerability, it's now it's viewed as that stability is lost. That reinforcement is not there anymore. So now, with that being said, it's very easy to live with the persona, display yourself as this strong guy. Yeah, I've got everything under control. And you tell yourself so much that it becomes a part of, it becomes your truth, essentially. And now that when these things bottle up and you have to express them, this is where the danger now is. Now, this is now a personal opinion. This is where the danger comes in. Because now you don't know how to express yourself when the issue is still minimal.
Yes.
When it's still handleable. But now it's gone beyond your, beyond your capacity to bottle in. Now, how do you clearly and mindfully express yourself? See, that's the problem with expressing yourself as a man, showing vulnerability. That's how it's dangerous, because I tell it to you, I'm now seen as weak. It's like I've told everyone now that I failed to be strong.
When you're saying that, when you're referencing to the phrase pillar of strength, and it makes so much sense that if a pillar has cracks, you suddenly don't feel like it can hold up. And the problem about us trying to, not wanting to go for help and seeking out help to patch up, where the cracks are, to try and get some reinforcement, we instead keep on letting the crack grow. And somehow, at some point, it will just collapse, There's a phrase in my language, eti, and it simply means taking a few steps back, going back into a safer place, a place that you will relate more to. You are just getting strength so you can tackle life even more. And unfortunately, the phrase itself says hasobaleya, meaning that it has always been viewed as cowardness. Trying to take a few steps back has always been seen as cowardness. And it's, society is so weird for that. They've always judged us. They've always made us feel bad. And women reinforce it. You reinforce it. Your family reinforce it. Because I remember growing up, every single time I cried to my mother and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this." But there's someone very interesting we want to bring to the conversation, who is going to open our eyes on the approach, and give us insight on how to go about this. And I want to bring forward our resident therapist in play, who's going to share information with us, who we're going to invite into this conversation as a therapist, and coming in also with a view as a woman into men dialogues and masculinity. And Sis Babalwa, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
We also well. One of the first things I want to really ask you, in your practice, what happens when men finally speak? I really want to know that first.
Well, without sharing anybody's personal things, I think different men react differently to receiving help. So I don't want to put everybody under one umbrella. But most of the time, we do find that it feels very foreign, and you always have to tiptoe around the issue and ask more indirect questions to get to what is the crux and what's actually happening.
Yeah, that is very interesting, because I am sort of afraid, approaching counseling. I am afraid of that. And I'm afraid of being vulnerable to someone else, because I've been hurt the few times I've been vulnerable about, what I'm going through. So I just want to know what is so risky about being vulnerable with the clients you've seen and also just in your practice.
Well, vulnerability is about connection, which means I have to open up to some degree. And that comes with its risks. I always say in therapy that you can be vulnerable, or the alternative is to live in the box, right? This is your choice. But at the end of the day, what are you benefiting from living an isolated life? Or risk the vulnerability, and there's factors that you can't control, like what people will do with that vulnerability.
Shoot.
And also be mindful that your vulnerability is not about the other person. It's mainly about you and what you need to get your needs met.
Yeah.
So we don't consider that, I suppose, when we try to hold ourselves in, that as I'm holding myself in, I'm not necessarily getting the benefits of connections with other people.
I certainly understand that viewpoint. And I think that's why then counseling emphasizes so much about confidentiality, about that whatever happens in this room stays in this room. And hey, also what happens here stays here. Yeah, but it's going to be out there.
Yeah.
You should definitely follow us on YouTube and Spotify and everywhere else that we have this going on. But Leslie, I need to know from you, in your personal view, what do you think healthy vulnerability is, before Babalo gives us the actual, insight on it?
Vulnerability, I think, comes down to communication. There's nothing that beats communication, man. And by communicating how you're feeling, you have to be mindful. You have to understand how you're feeling, and you have to have a clear way to portray it. But now you have to also be considerate of someone else. Be considerate not in the sense of what will they see me as now, but let me share this. They might not like it, but I don't want to come off as rude. I should be mindful that they're a person too. They also have emotions. And now that's one way to be vulnerable, because it's very easy for someone to be defensive. I can show up to you and be like, you know what? We had a conversation yesterday. You dismissed me. I don't appreciate it. And now when I present something like that to you, it's very easy for someone to get defensive. Now, how do we get around that? Because now we won't have a clear conversation. It's not me fighting against you just because the conversation is uncomfortable. It's me addressing you about a situation we had. We're not fighting. We're just trying to resolve, come to a solution for this. That's what vulnerability means to me. Being able to communicate about our differences or what I didn't like and not come off as an attack to you, but more of a request to approach the problem.
So, Babala, what do you think healthy vulnerability looks like?
Well, if I can maybe summarize what you just said, it sounds like vulnerability is more about sharing your experiences, how you are experiencing other people in your environment. And then sometimes you are met with welcoming, and other times other people don't have the capacity to handle whatever you bring. So then I would take it as, okay, that means vulnerability is about your experience, right? And what the next person does with it is really out of your control. That's why it could be healthy, acknowledging that this is my experience. I want to be able to process it. What the next person does with what I share is out of my hands. And getting to that place is very hard because, as you guys said, society is structured in such a way that we are kind of taught that we need to be able to take everything by the chin. Men and women in different ways, right? And this makes it hard for everybody to actually access sharing experience, which is what it is really. It's to share what is happening with you, acknowledging that you're not superhuman, you're just human.
You know what you're saying right now? You say, I need to understand that my vulnerability, I'm giving it to someone, putting myself out. But what the next person does with that is out of my control. And I think that is my fear about being vulnerable. Because I've been growing up, I lost my little sister when I was young. And throughout the period of her passing to a burial and months down the line, I had not said this to him. None of my friends knew this. None of my teachers knew this. It was only people that are at home and the neighbors. But, quickly, just the people in my neighborhood, you would see, those girls that like you, and then they try to use your vulnerability to get close to you. And you notice that and you're like, wait, why is this person using my vulnerability to capitalize on me? And so such things just make you feel uncomfortable with being vulnerable in general. Because even if they don't use it as a weapon against you, they use it as some commodity to capitalize on you. So then how do we get to a point where we can create a safe space for others to be vulnerable? How do we also try to create a safe space for ourselves and other people so that we can be vulnerable with them? How do you go?
Identifying the safe spaces, I think, is the first thing, right? So, for example, as a mental health professional, I'd say come to Emthonjeni, but that may not be safe for you, and you see other spaces as more safe. It's our stage. So acknowledging that I have limits, as all people do, and finding a way to trust that there are resources that I can access. It may not mean seeking professional help. Maybe I can just talk to Leslie, and he may have some insights to help me as a pillar stand stronger, right? I think when we were doing the training for peer helpers, wound was a very big topic. And we are taught about it throughout high school, primary. But it seems like the further we go, we forget what Africanism actually is, right? So, as much as we are scared to share our soft pieces, we're also taught that you're supposed to lean on other people. It's actually natural. So, I suppose creating such spaces where people can actually share, and thank you for sharing. Because then once you share, I feel more confident to share, right? You never know what your share may do to another person.
Very powerful what you just said. And it comes up. So with what you're saying, it just boils down to us creating a safe space in others, being a safe space for others, being vulnerable for your own self, and not what you think the harm they will do on you. And I think that is what has kept us back for some time. And hopefully we can progress from that. And we can outlive this legacy. My concern now is we're trying to hear what other people think about what is communication. What does it mean to communicate? I mean, Leslie, you answered it. But now we just want to hear what other people have to say about communication. Let's hear what they have.
As a man, communication to me means more than just words. It's about connection. Growing up, I was often taught to stay strong and silent, to keep my emotions in check, but over time I've learned that real strength lies in how I express myself with honesty. So communication is how I show respect, how I listen, and how I build trust with the people that are around me. It's not always easy, especially when it comes to sharing feelings, but it is quite necessary. When I'm having a deep conversation or simply checking in with someone I care about, I've come to see that speaking openly and listening fully are key parts of being a better man. So for me, communication is not just a skill, it's a daily choice to show up, be present, and connect with other people in a real way. So good communication isn't about saying a lot, it's about saying what really matters and being open to what others have to say too.
Wow. That's on point. I think let's hear what they have to say about what does vulnerability mean. And then we'll respond to the episode.
Weaknesses, what your weaknesses are, where you require work on your character and such. I feel like a lot of guys, they choose not to be vulnerable for many reasons. And it stems just from their thoughts and what they think of themselves. In my experience, vulnerability was tough for me in the beginning. It was tough to be vulnerable in the beginning of my teen years. But now that I've fully accepted who I am, or mostly, I think it's difficult for one to fully accept who they are. I can be vulnerable. I can talk to people, and I can show people my weaknesses without feeling like I'm doing a bad thing. But yeah.
Powerful.
I love those responses actually.
Yeah.
They're so raw, so sincere, but then it's also showing that more people, more men now are willing to just share. They're willing to open those gates, break down those walls and share information. They know now that it's not weakness.
Yeah.
And that's what I picked up from these voice notes. And it actually makes me feel a lot better about vulnerability and communication amongst men and with men sharing what they're feeling.
You know, Leslie, I perhaps never responded to any of the questions myself, but communication is, for me, there's a comment that said men give non-verbal clues. And I have to say, I am of a different opinion. Men are more verbal than women are. We speak, like we share. The difference about what we share and how we share that's the only difference. But we do communicate. We say what we want. I don't know how many times I've been in a relationship and I've said how I want to be loved. And for some reason, it's never been heard. I've always said how I want to be treated. It's just never been heard. So I do communicate those things. It's just because of how I've seen them treat the small words I've given them, it has taught me how to restrict what I give them. So my vulnerability in expressing it has been totally dependent on how they receive it and how they've responded to my needs.
That makes so much sense now. Now that you've brought it up, it actually reminds me of what I said earlier. So, I love how you said communication, it's how we share it that is different. Then you realize that we usually throw banter. You know a lot about me through the banter we share.
Yeah.
The inside jokes.
Yeah.
You know me the raw Leslie, what I'm feeling just from the jokes we share.
Yeah.
Sometimes I might be demeaning myself as a joke, but you pick it up. You know, because your response is related to that. You've opened my eyes to something that I've never really considered.
And now let's let Babala open our eyes one more time. She's going to give us the closing words relating to the voice notes and the response to that.
Thank you, guys. I think that was a very, very informative discussion. And from the voice notes, I think what I got was that vulnerability and communication go hand in hand. They're like siblings. You can't have one without the other. And to kind of try and not live in those two spaces makes your life a bit difficult. So if you're not going to communicate with people, it does affect you somehow in the spaces you want to navigate. And similarly with vulnerability, if I'm not vulnerable, I may not be aware of what my body actually needs. So how am I going to access the things that my body needs? So I think from the voice notes, what I got is that men are aware of these things. It's just that we are not engaging in the conversation on how to actually be a man. Hopefully not me, because I'm not part of that demographic. How to be a man and also be able to freely communicate and be vulnerable, even though there is judgment. So how do I exist in my body, knowing that the world wants me to exist this way, but I can still push back. Like, I don't need to constantly be assimilating to what the world needs so that I have space for myself. That's what I got from this. And thank you very much. It was very active.
Thank you so much, Sis Babsi. And that was our resident therapist, from an expert point of view, and also giving a touch of feminine into it, and to the masculine dialogue. But Leslie, I want to hear your parting words as well. What did you take away? What's the takeaway from you, from what you want to leave here as a legacy? Because you want to inherit this from our grandfathers. Please leave a legacy that's there.
Hey man, it was a great time. It was a wonderful learning experience. I took the whole communication thing. The communication isn't less for men. It's just different. It's not that we don't talk about these things, we do, but it's just portrayed different. And how it's received affects how we share it. That was a very crucial part of understanding how and why we feel this whole sharing of vulnerability and communicating is hard. And I'd love to kind of live this message of having to understand that what you're feeling is understood by you first. Not anyone outside looking at you won't understand how you're feeling if you don't share it. And just like Usis Babalo said, you're not in control of what the person reacts like, how they accept or
Vulnerability.
yes, how they accept your vulnerability and receive it. So that's pretty much all there is to it. Share and get ready to accept it. It won't be received the same way through from different people.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for being a part of the first episode of Majita Monday Podcast. It has been a very informative session that we've had. Thank you to More Fire for giving us the fire to, the flame that we've received. Now, let's go light up other torches and let the message continue. And to definitely follow more of these dialogues. They'll be on Spotify, YouTube. We'll share the links as time goes. The first episode will premiere on the 16th of June. I assume this is the 16th of June now when you're hearing this, right? Amazing stuff. But I want to say that Emthonjeni is an existing support service inside the university in terms of counseling. And there's always a misconception of what a psychologist does. And I just want to say it in my opinion so that we can break the barrier. And I want to say, sometimes it's like a dish of food you know, when food, you cannot consume all of this food. Like it's too much food for you, you know, or it's too complex for your digestive system to take it all in. Your plate is full. What a psychologist does, they shrink it. And that's why they call shrinks. They help you break down this overwhelming experience that you're having. And they break it down for you into bits that you can understand, into bits that you can live with. And that is one thing I want to say to you. But thank you, Matibas, for joining us today. And let the movement continue. Majita Monday forever. Away,
Merci.